Hi, hello. So, as I've learned and adopted terminology that best expresses my lived experience, it's been hard on the channel to keep up with explaining them in depth alongside their introduction and when I use them, because it's quite often a lot of things coming into place at once and intertwining with other neurodivergent traits and conditioning experiences, so on and so forth. So, some words are kind of context based, so you can guess what they mean, like masking, but that's not always enough for someone who has never experienced something similar to really understand what's going on internally. So, today, I'd like to start with rumination, because I experience it the most. Every day, throughout the day, it keeps me up at night, etc. Please note, I am not a medical professional. I'm just sharing what I've learned and relating it to my experiences. Autistic ruminations are basically thought loops where certain memories can repeatedly and intrusively keep coming back front of mind. For me, anyway, it's not a nice sort of recollection where a sunny day will remind me of a picnic. No. The experiences that replay in my rumination are canonically bad ones. Something that I went through that was distressing or traumatic. And the point of this and why this happens for autistic and otherwise people is that the rumination is trying to resolve a need for closure that we never got. As unhelpful as it may seem to continuously have your traumas jump scare you throughout the day, it's also low key necessary to move on, I guess. For me, although I am no longer in similar situations where it would therefore seem prudent to analyze what happened as a means to be preventative, I also can't move on until I understand why something happened, because that's also constantly distressing. I've always suffered from rumination, though I didn't know that's what it was called. Like what I was doing, what was happening to me. When I'd get home from school as a kid, exhausted from socializing, I'd just lay in bed in silence and dark and just replay my day, analyzing everything that I said, the way other people acted. Back then, I was kind of so busy living and having new experiences that my ruminations constantly evolved and I was just catching up with them day by day. But now that I'm an adult and I don't have as many impactful or unique experiences on the daily, I kind of have like a playlist of memories that cycle back to me. All of the things that are unresolved that I worry over. Did I do the right thing? Was there hidden context I missed? Why would that person behave that way? As much as rumination has been a stable occurrence throughout my life, in childhood, the things that plagued me were more like the generalized trauma of feeling perpetually misunderstood and out of place as a neurodivergent kid in a neurotypical world. Like, distressing, yes, but building on a working understanding of things at the same time. However, as my current set of memoirs detail, I didn't have a great environment in my early adulthood. I was subject to erratic human behaviors that I had no previous framework through which to understand. I experienced shit that any normal, well adjusted person would struggle with processing, and unfortunately, I don't think any amount of overanalyzing the situations will ever provide an adequate understanding in which I'll find resolution. Even before I had the term autistic rumination, I did understand that that's like what I'm doing. I'm trying to find closure. I'm trying to understand so desperately. And there's like a self report in the introduction of one of my memoirs and on my WriterTube channel talking about my writing process that I'm simultaneously afraid to forget what happened, lest I ever find myself in a similar situation, but that I also obsessively needed to like write these things out in hopes that the rumination on them would finally leave me alone. Like I thought that was the cure. If I go over it enough times, if I write it out, if I process it, if I write memoirs, I'll be cured. As it turns out, that didn't work. I think low key, it helped to lessen the frequency of some memories popping back up into my head all the time. because I spent enough time reviewing things to feel a bit more comfortable with the results, but it hasn't made them go away by any means. As nuanced as I can be, I've still got a pretty black and white thinking structure and strong sense of justice, so I find it fundamentally impossible to let go of things that happen to me that I consider to be unfair. As much as ruminations may have helped me to develop an understanding to be preventative for some things, I'm also accumulating a catalog of upsetting experiences which serve no purpose because they really are just bad and unfair, and there was no lesson to be learned from them. But my brain can't accept that, so it keeps trying anyway. To put it this way, for someone who can't relate or has never had this, you're just sitting around, chilling. You've had a nice, uneventful day, you're happy and fed and feeling good, and then someone leans in and whispers, "Hey, remember that time you were all alone and a crackhead tried to break into your apartment?" Except nobody said that. It was just your brain ruining an otherwise perfectly fine moment. It's unfortunately not always that relevant memories pop up because I got triggered by something specific. Sometimes it's just random and intrusive and upsetting for no reason. It feels like memories are on a cycle, and my brain just decides, like, you haven't thought about that in a while, and throws it at me. And it's not always really dramatic traumas either. Sometimes it's just kind of mundane stuff that didn't play out very well. Like, you want to know one that I'm obsessing over, like, recently? Um, I moved out on my own for a while in my early 20s, and I had two other female roommates in a house who I accumulatively ever had about like 5 minutes of conversation with. And one day, before I had an evening shift, I'd planned to do my laundry that morning. All my work uniforms were dirty. So I went down to the laundry room and found that the washing machine was already occupied because there was something sitting in it. I had time to kill, it was still the morning, so I waited. I thought if they'd started their laundry and it's already done, they must be coming back soon to get it, right? Um, but hours went past, and I started to worry because it was getting close to when I'd have to start my laundry if I wanted it to be done in time. So I went to check specifically, like actually opening the laundry to see what's going on, and sure enough, no one had been home or touched it. Originally, I was just going to put their stuff in the dryer for them and start mine in the washer, but upon opening the washing machine, I found a completely soaked wool sweater. Not only was it way too wet to put in the dryer, but I was aware that other people buy more expensive clothing than I do, and I did not have experience in knowing what materials shrink in dryers. I didn't want to accidentally fuck up their clothes. So instead, I placed their clothes in the dryer as is and didn't turn it on, and started my own clothes in the washing machine. When my wash cycle was done, I put my clothes in the dryer and replaced their sweater back into the washing machine exactly how I'd found it. And yeah, no, they still hadn't come home yet, by the way. Um, because of the delay, having waited for them for so long and them never coming, I ended up having to put on a still slightly damp uniform when I went off to work, which felt awful. I left my roommate, not knowing which of the two girls it was, a note on the washing machine saying that I think their clothing absorbed too much water and it preemptively ended its own wash cycle because it got too heavy. I thought that'd be helpful, or at least prompt them to wring it out before sticking it in the dryer because I didn't want the dryer to get damaged as well by the tumbler being too weighted. So then, later, while I'm at work in the middle of my shift, I get a text from them angry at me for leaving things how I'd found it. Obviously, I don't have the exact wording, it was many years ago, but essentially, they were pissed that I didn't help them out more. They were mad that they'd come back to their own clothes still soaking wet. And I was I was confused, and I gave them my explanation about the whole wool thing, that I didn't know material needs and I didn't want them to be even madder if I ruined their clothes, and but they were still displeased overall. And they wanted me to have done more for them even though I didn't know what and I was trying to be considerate. And it's shit like that that like perpetually comes back to me in rumination. Interactions that, No matter how I look at it, I can't make sense of the series of events, of process, and logic. I was the one who was inhibited from doing laundry because they abandoned theirs all day. I was the one who had to work around them and went to my job in damp clothes because of them. They were the ones who were being neglectful, and they were mad at me for not knowing what they would have wanted in that situation. The real kicker, and why this one sticks with me so much, is that if I'd never left them a note in the first place, nothing would have been different. Their clothes would have stayed soaked and in that washing machine all day, whether I acknowledged its presence or not. So, how did it suddenly become my responsibility to have done something else, rather than them deserving of passive aggressive flack on my part for them being so inhibiting, because they're the bad roommate? I can reason through it all I want, but it will never get more logical, so the memory may never leave me alone. It's an example of one of the innumerable times that I have not been able to overcome a difference in perspective and failed a social encounter, and I need to keep revisiting it to remain aware that people just be like that sometimes. So I have to expect it, because I cannot prevent it, despite my best attempts to keep relations amicable. That is what I mean when I say I have ruminations. They greatly vary in levels of distress, from objective trauma to social friction, but they all come unprompted throughout my days just to piss in my bowl of cereal.